I want you to try a little thought experiment with me just to kind of kick things off today.
Okay, I am game.
So close your eyes for a second. I mean, assuming you aren't driving right now, right? And picture yourself sitting in a completely dark movie theater.
Got it. I can smell the overpriced popcorn already.
Exactly. Yeah. You've got the popcorn, the screen is glowing, and you are watching the climactic scene of this huge animated film just playing out right in front of you.
Like the big dramatic finale.
Right. The characters are in total peril. The orchestral strings are swelling up. And then right at the peak, the lead vocalist on the soundtrack hits that massive, like impossible high note.
Oh, yeah. The one that gives you goosebumps.
Yes, exactly. In that exact fraction of a second when the hair on your arm stands up, what do you think is actually happening there?
I mean, most people just think they're hearing a good song, right?
Right. Do you think you are just hearing a really talented person singing a melody, or do you recognize that your brain is basically being hacked?
Hacked is such a good word for it because it really is an intrusion.
It is, because in that moment, you aren't just listening to music. You are experiencing this highly engineered, meticulously calibrated emotional landscape.
100%.
And it is one that has been specifically designed by industry professionals to guide your cognitive state from this place of extreme tension to absolute relief.
It really completely reframes how you watch movies once you realize this is happening behind the scenes.
It changes everything.
Because we always talk about voice casting and animation as this purely aesthetic choice, right? Like, we assume a director just sits in a recording booth and says, oh, they sound lovely, let's hire them.
Like they just want a pretty voice.
Yeah. Or maybe it's just about finding someone who can hit a high C without their voice cracking.
Yeah.
But the reality of modern multi-million-dollar animation properties is it's far more clinical. And honestly, it is far more fascinating.
It is a literal science. It is not just about pitch or tone or having a pretty vibrato. I mean, it is about assigning a very specific targeted cognitive function to a vocalist.
The cognitive function, yes, that is exactly it.
The creators of these massive media properties are using the singer's voice to actively manipulate the emotional coherence of the audience in real time.
And that phrase right there, emotional coherence, I mean, that is the absolute bedrock of what we're dissecting today.
We are going deep on this one.
Because when you sit down to watch a narrative unfold, especially a narrative that introduces like extreme stress or trauma or conflict, your brain immediately goes into this state of dissonance.
Right. It feels uncomfortable.
Exactly. It is subconsciously searching for psychological safety. It wants order restored. It craves that coherence.
So a vocalist in a climactic scene isn't just performing a pop song.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
They're delivering a calculated psychological antidote to the narrative tension you have just endured on that screen.
Wow, an antidote.
And if they fail to deliver that antidote convincingly, the audience just leaves the theater feeling anxious and unsatisfied and completely disconnected from the movie.
Which brings us to exactly what we are unpacking today. So welcome to Future_Music Deep Dive.
So glad to be here.
Today, we are taking a massive stack of sources. I mean, we are talking dense industry financial reports, granular box office data, behind-the-scenes production notes, and even artist psychological profile.
I really brought all the receipts for this one.
We are tearing them down to the studs because we are analyzing the psychological and structural architecture behind the soundtrack of SAMG Entertainment's massive new animated feature, Teenieping Legend of the Whale Heartstone.
And I know for anyone listening who might be thinking, wait a minute, a deep dive on a kid's cartoon, I promise you the level of behavioral engineering happening behind the scenes of this specific film is more complex than most prestige adult dramas.
No, it puts them to shame, honestly.
It really is a masterclass in audience psychology.
Absolutely. So our mission for this deep dive is to deconstruct how one specific vocalist, Gwyn Dorado, is being utilized by the studio not just as a talented singer, but as a highly strategic tool for emotional resolution.
Which is a huge burden to put on one artist.
It really is. We are going to look at how a single voice can be engineered to bridge the massive psychological gap between a child's boundless imagination and an adult's deeply rooted emotional baggage.
The cross-demographic psychological bonding.
Yeah.
I mean, it is wild stuff.
It is so wild. So to really grasp the sheer magnitude of what SAMG Entertainment is attempting to do with Gwendorado, we cannot just look at the soundtrack in a vacuum, right?
No, you have to zoom out.
We have to look at the baseline environment she's stepping into. So we need to trace the cognitive evolution of the Teenieping intellectual property itself, because this franchise is undergoing a massive maturation right now.
It's growing up fast.
Really fast. So let's lay out the structural data to establish that baseline, because the commercial reality of SAMG Entertainment is just staggering.
The numbers are insane.
If you aren't familiar with the South Korean animation market, you might think Catch Teenieping is just some cute weekend morning cartoon, but it is not.
Not even close.
It is a colossal multi-platform consumer ecosystem. Let me just give you the numbers here, because in 2023 alone, this brand generated 76 billion Korean won.
Let that sink in for a second.
76 billion. And to put that into perspective for you, that single intellectual property accounted for nearly 80% of SAMG's entire total corporate revenue, which sat at 143.2 billion Korean won.
So, I mean, if you look at it from a business standpoint, if this franchise stumbles, the entire company faces an existential threat.
Yeah.
Right? It is the absolute financial anchor.
It's their Mickey Mouse.
Exactly. It is their Mickey Mouse.
The stakes could not be higher here, and to understand the pressure on this new film, we have to contrast it with their very first theatrical release.
Right, the 2024 movie.
Yeah, in 2024, they released Heartsping Love of Teenieping, and that film was a runaway success. I mean, it drew 1.24 million domestic admissions.
Huge turnout.
It generated $7.7 million at the box office, and it cemented itself as the second highest grossing domestic animated feature film in South Korean history.
But we have to look at the narrative structure of that 2024 film, because it was fairly straightforward.
Very straightforward, yeah.
It focused on the very first meeting and the emotional bonding between the main protagonist, Romy, and her fairy-like companion, Heartsping. So the thematic core was all about simple peer-to-peer friendship.
Which makes sense for the audience.
Totally. It perfectly aligns with foundational early childhood cognitive development. I mean, think about the target demographic for that first film.
Just really young kids.
Exactly. The narrative is essentially modeling how to interact with peers on a playground. It's about sharing, forming basic attachments, learning empathy in a very safe, highly controlled environment.
So there's barely any stress.
Right. The psychological load on a young viewer is minimal because the themes are completely domestic and entirely familiar.
But now we fast forward to the sequel, Legend of the Whale Heartstone, which released on August 5, 2026.
And everything changes.
Everything. The technical shift alone is a massive indicator of where they are taking this franchise. I mean, the production completely moved away from standard 3D CGI character performance set against these bright terrestrial backdrops.
No more sunny playground?
No, instead, they transitioned into highly advanced water simulation and deep-sea color design pipelines. Like, they basically built an entirely new rendering infrastructure just to handle the oceanic environments.
And you have to understand that technical shift is not merely an aesthetic flex by the animation department.
It's not just to look pretty.
No. When a studio pours that kind of capital into revamping their visual pipeline, it is almost always a reflection of a deeper psychological maturation in the narrative.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, they're changing the visual language because they're fundamentally changing the emotional language.
So walk me through that. I mean, how does the visual shift to the ocean actually change the emotional language for the audience?
Well, think about the ocean as a universal psychological archetype, right? In literature and mythology and in cinema water, and specifically the deep ocean is rarely just a location.
Right. It always means something else.
Exactly. Moving a protagonist from the bright, familiar safety of a sunny terrestrial playground into a complex, dark, unpredictable deep-sea environment is a literal visual metaphor for descending into darker emotional territory.
Wow, so it's setting the mood on a subconscious level?
Yes. The ocean represents the vast unknown. It represents the subconscious, and crucially, in the context of this specific narrative, it represents profound, overwhelming loss.
Which ties directly into the plot of this sequel because the narrative trauma introduced here is shockingly intense for a family film.
It really is quite dark.
In Legend of the Whale Heartstone, Queen Belita, who is Romy's mother, has been cursed by an evil sea dragon, violently transformed into a fish, and literally lost to the depths of the sea.
So immediately, the emotional focus of the franchise has completely fractured, right? We are no longer dealing with the simple low-stakes anxiety of, will my friends share their toy with me?
Right, we are miles away from that.
We are
Yeah.
suddenly navigating themes of sudden parental separation, extreme physical sacrifice,
Mhm.
and the enduring nature of maternal love across impossible distances.
That is a lot for a kid to process.
It is massive.
Uh-huh.
The cognitive load on the audience has just exponentially increased.
Okay, I hear what you're saying about the psychological load, but come on. I mean, isn't this just standard sequel escalation?
You mean like the Hollywood playbook?
Exactly, the Hollywood playbook, right? The stakes just have to be bigger in part 2. The villain has to have sharper teeth. The explosion has to be louder.
Sure, yeah.
So why is this specific thematic shift to maternal loss so much more difficult for a studio to pull off than just adding a scarier monster? Like, why are we analyzing this as a massive psychological risk?
That is a great question, because a scarier monster just triggers an external fear response, right? Which is easily resolved by the hero just punching the monster or outsmarting it.
Right, the threat is outside.
Exactly. But what we are talking about here is internal existential trauma. Let me give you an analogy to frame how massive this leap actually is.
Okay, let's hear it.
Moving from the first film to this sequel is like taking a child from the cognitive simplicity of learning how to take turns on a slide and plunging them directly into a therapist's office to process existential familial grief.
Oh, wow, that is a harsh transition.
It is a staggering leap in emotional maturity.
The fear of losing a parent, I mean, for a child, there is almost nothing heavier, right? It is the ultimate nightmare.
It's the primal fear. I mean, the psychological stakes are not just different. They are foundational to a child's sense of security in the world.
Right.
And this is where the multi-generational aspect of the theater audience becomes the studio's biggest problem. I mean, look around that dark theater we imagined earlier.
The one from our thought experiment.
Yes, the audience isn't just composed of 5-year-olds. You have 5-year-olds, 10-year-olds, teenagers, and their adult guardians all sitting in the dark watching a mother be ripped away from her child.
That is a very mixed crowd to cater to.
It is. And if a production studio doesn't structurally ensure that both the pediatric and the adult demographics are emotionally supported through that specific trauma, the audience will experience severe cognitive dissonance.
Meaning they'll feel emotionally unsafe or they'll just disconnect from the movie entirely because the emotional whiplash is too much to handle.
Exactly.
Like the adults will think it's too bleak for a kid's movie and the kids will just be straight up traumatized.
Precisely. The brain is a coherence-seeking machine, and if a story breaks that coherence by introducing a trauma it doesn't adequately maturely resolve, the viewer is left in a state of lingering psychological distress.
And an audience in distress does not buy merchandise.
Absolutely not.
Audience in distress does not come back for part 3. They just want to leave.
Right, so they have to fix it.
So how does SAMG structurally ensure the audience doesn't experience that dissonance? I mean, what is the actual mechanism they use to hold the audience's hand through this trauma?
That is where the music steps in to do the heavy lifting. The creators of Legend of the Whale Heartstone utilized the musical soundtrack as the primary psychological scaffolding to manage this highly complex emotional transition.
Okay, so the music is the tool.
Yes, the dialogue moves the plot forward, but the music manages the trauma.
Okay, let's dive into the structural data of that soundtrack lineup, because this is where the behavioral engineering gets really explicit in the sources.
It is so calculated.
The studio didn't just throw a few catchy pop songs in there and hope for the best. I mean, music director Kim Tae-ho was completely in charge of the curation strategy, and his approach broke all the traditional rules of family animation.
He essentially engineered a demographic targeting system using vocalists. It's brilliant.
Exactly. Rather than using the standard, bright, slightly exaggerated voices of pediatric voice actors, which you know is the industry standard for a property targeting young children.
Like the usual high-pitched cartoon voices.
Yeah, instead of that, the production built a high-profile 4-track co-artist lineup. And looking at our sources, it is blatantly clear this lineup is structured as distinct demographic funnels.
They are assigning different psychological tasks to different pop stars.
Yes. So what is so compelling about this strategy is how cleanly we can deconstruct the psychological assignment of each of those 4 tracks.
Kim Tae-ho didn't just put together a playlist for Spotify, right? He built a cohesive emotional spectrum.
This spectrum.
Yeah, each song is a stepping stone designed to guide the audience's cognitive state from the bright opening of the film down into the trauma and back out into safety.
Let's walk the listener through the spectrum step by step, because the first track on the album is a duet called Open Your Eyes, and it's performed by Jae-hee of the prominent K-pop group NCT WISH, alongside Yuha from the rising girl group Hearts 2 Hearts.
Both very young, very energetic idols.
Right, and the production notes describe this as an upbeat, modern driving track focused on themes of hope and discovery, specifically placed during the sequence where the characters first encounter the vast oceanic world.
So if we isolate the psychological function of that specific track, it is entirely about engineering cognitive openness.
Cognitive openness, okay.
Yeah, it is an injection of pure youthful optimism. I mean, from a purely structural demographic standpoint, placing NCT WISH right at the front of the film is designed to trigger immediate engagement in active teenagers and Gen Z listeners.
The K-pop enthusiasts who might otherwise just completely tune out a quote-unquote kids movie.
Exactly. But narratively, it serves a much deeper purpose. It establishes a baseline of psychological safety.
Oh, so it's like a Trojan horse. You use the upbeat, familiar K-pop tempo to get the audience to drop their guard.
That's a brilliant way to put it. It tells the audience's nervous system, yes, we are leaving the land. Yes, the ocean is big and new and vast. But listen to this major key. Listen to this driving beat. It is also a place of wonder.
It's okay, you can trust this space.
Right. You are safe to explore this unknown space. It creates a state of deep receptivity before the real trauma hits.
Which makes the transition to the second track so crucial, because the second track is an unnamed solo piece performed by a 16-year-old vocalist named Jiyeon, who is professionally known as Wyon, and she is also from the group Hearts 2 Hearts.
So we are keeping it in the same idol family.
Yeah, but the narrative tie-in for her song is Romi's internal struggle and determination to face the unknown, terrifying dangers of the deep sea to find her mother.
So notice how the emotional architecture shifts here. We move from the external shared wonder of the first track, the duet, to an internal solitary space.
It gets much more personal.
Exactly, and the casting of Yoon is incredibly specific. A 16-year-old vocalist perfectly embodies the psychological concept of liminality.
Liminality, right, being in between things.
Yes, she occupies that transitional, messy space between childhood dependence and adult independence. So this track is the psychological representation of solitary courage.
Because youthful optimism isn't going to help you when a sea dragon is trying to eat you, right? You need a bridge between naive hope and actual grit.
Exactly. The first track said the ocean is wonderful. Yeon's track acknowledges the stark reality. No, the ocean is terrifying.
It validates the fear.
It validates the very real threat of the sea dragon and the horrifying reality of the curse. But it models the cognitive resilience, the protagonist, and the audience needs to push through it.
So it doesn't hide the fear, it gives the audience the emotional tools to endure it.
That is exactly what it does.
I love that. But then we hit the third piece of the puzzle, and this is where I actually did a double take when I read the source material.
Oh, I know exactly what you're going to say.
Track 3 is called Because It's the First Time, and it's a duet performed by veteran ballad vocalist Baek Ji-young and actress Young Ji-so.
A total departure from the idols.
Completely, and the narrative focus of this track is the deep emotional bond and the shared grief between mother and daughter.
And your double take is completely justified, because bringing in Baek Ji-young for a children's animated feature is a highly unorthodox move.
It makes no sense on paper.
Right, she is the undisputed queen of Korean drama OSTs, their original soundtracks. Her voice is synonymous with mature, devastating heartbreak. So why put her in a movie about magical fairies?
Because she isn't singing for the kids.
Precisely, this track is doing the most intricate, heavy-lifting psychological work of the entire film. It is the exploration of complex, shared vulnerability, engineered to resonate exclusively with the adult guardians sitting in the theater.
The maternal anchoring.
Yes. Think about the parent sitting next to their 5-year-old. Yeah. The parent understands the absolute terror of the maternal separation plotline on a level the child simply cannot.
Right, the adult has all that life experience.
Exactly. The Baek Ji-young track acknowledges that profound adult grief. It provides a sonic space for the adults to process their own emotional reactions to the narrative trauma.
Wow.
And here's the brilliant part. By validating the adult's emotional experience and allowing them a moment of catharsis, the film actually creates a safer environment for the child.
Oh, because children regulate their emotions based on their parents' physical reactions, right? So if the parent feels emotionally seen and grounded by the music, they naturally project calm to the kid sitting next to them.
You nailed it. It's called co-regulation.
Yeah.
The music stabilizes the parent, so the parent can stabilize the child.
Okay, let me map this out so we don't lose the forest for the trees here, because If we view these three tracks as the elaborate setup, we have the youthful optimism of the K-pop idols to get the audience in the door and lower their defenses.
Check.
We have the internal courage of the 16-year-old to help the kids face the scary parts.
Yep.
And we have the profound veteran maternal grief of Baek Ji-young to ground the adults.
It is an incredibly complex emotional soup to leave an audience floating in.
It really is. So what is the structural mechanism that resolves all of this tension? Because you can't just end a movie on raw courage and deep maternal grief.
You absolutely cannot. If you leave them suspended in that state, you completely fail the mandate of cognitive coherence we discussed at the start.
Right. The brain is left hanging.
The audience will leave the theater feeling unresolved, anxious, and deeply dissatisfied. You need a massive, undeniable, cathartic resolution to tie all of those emotional threads together.
And that desperation for a massive emotional release valve brings us to the centerpiece of our deep dive, the specific psychological function of Gwendorado and her performance on the final track, Light of Love.
She is the crucial, missing puzzle piece that makes the entire architecture work.
Let's give the listener Gwyn Dorado's baseline profile because her context outside of this cartoon is everything here.
It really recontextualizes her presence.
According to the industry data in our stack, she is a 21-year-old Filipina vocalist who signed an exclusive 5-year contract with South Korean agency AO Entertainment in February 2024.
And she has been incredibly busy since then.
Very busy now, her rise to prominence in the Korean market is deeply, inextricably tied to a historic run on the television singing competition, Sing Again 4.
And her run on that show wasn't just successful, it was dominant.
Unbelievably dominant. She took second place in the grand finale on January 6, 2026, and she recorded the highest single-round score in the entire history of the program.
She just blew the roof off the place.
She really did, but it's what she was hired to do after the reality show that really matters for our analysis today, because her history in the South Korean entertainment industry is entirely anchored in mature, emotionally devastating properties.
This is where it gets interesting.
Right in mid-2025, she recorded the English language ballad, What If, for the drama Together. Then in May 2026, she performed the sweeping Korean ballad Losing My Heart for a Netflix-distributed romance melodrama called My Royal Nemesis.
So we have to pause and examine the immense psychological weight of what SAMG is doing by inserting an adult melodrama vocalist into a vibrant family IP.
It's quite a pivot.
Gwendorado is not a vocalist known for light, bouncy bubblegum pop songs. That is not her brand at all. Her vocal timbre is inherently associated with complex adult emotions, deep romantic angst, and heavy thematic material.
Right. It's like bringing in a heavy-duty psychological anchor. You don't use her for the setup. You use her for the payload.
That is a perfect way to conceptualize it. When an adult audience hears her voice, their brains are already Pavlovian primed for emotional gravity.
They're conditioned to feel it.
Exactly. They hear her tone, and their subconscious says, okay, this is the part where we feel something profound.
So let's look at exactly how the studio deploys that heavy-duty anchor in the film, because her track Light of Love anchors the absolute narrative climax of the movie.
The big finale.
This is the big sweeping moment where Romy, alongside Heartstone, a new Seaboy character named Kite, and all these new oceanic companions like Shelly Ping, Wavy Ping, and Bubble Ping, they all finally join forces, break the sea curse, and reunite with Queen Belita.
It is the ultimate moment of coherence seeking for the entire franchise order is finally being restored.
Yes, and the track itself is structured to mirror that exact psychological journey.
How so?
Well, it transitions from a very soft, fragile, introspective opening into this absolute powerhouse, belt register, orchestral climax. It's specifically engineered to showcase the immense room-shaking vocal power that defined her historic run on Sing Again 4.
So if we look at this strictly from a cognitive perspective, that musical transition from soft introspection to a full-chested belt register climax is a perfectly engineered emotional release valve.
It just lets all the pressure out.
Exactly. Think about the physical state of the audience in that theater for the past hour. They have quite literally been holding their breath. They have been carrying the tension of the curse, the claustrophobic fear of the deep ocean, and the agonizing grief of the separated mother and daughter.
The nervous systems are wound incredibly tight.
They're living in that psychological dissonance we mapped out earlier.
Right, right.
And the very moment Gwendorado's voice swells, pushes past the orchestral arrangement, and hits that climax, it provides total, undeniable catharsis. It gives the audience's nervous system absolute permission to finally let go.
It restores emotional safety on a physiological level.
Yes, perfectly said.
It's amazing you say that because the lyrics of the song are so deliberate in reinforcing exactly that feeling. I actually have the translation from our sources here.
Oh, read it. What does it say?
During this climax, she sings, "Love shines beautifully like stars and the world shines brightly. If we join forces, there will surely be a way."
Which is the literal verbal translation of cognitive resolution. If we join forces, there will surely be a way. It is explicitly telling the stressed brain that the trauma has been overcome through collective strength.
The nightmare is finally over.
Exactly. Order has been restored. You can breathe now.
But here's why I think casting Gwyn specifically is so genius. If you've ever watched a heavy movie and the ending feels cheap or unearned, it ruins the whole experience, right?
Oh, totally. It completely takes you out of it.
Right. So by bringing Dorado into this space, her voice carries the residue of those complex adult emotions from her Netflix OSTs. It grants this animated climax a level of raw gravitas that forces the adult viewers to take the emotional resolution seriously.
It prevents the ending from feeling hollow, because an adult brain is highly skeptical. It will instantly reject a cheap resolution to a complex emotional problem.
Right. The adult brain is sitting there thinking, wait a minute, she was violently cursed by a sea monster and trapped in the body of a fish at the bottom of the ocean for months. You can't just sing a happy little jingle and pretend that trauma didn't happen.
Exactly. A standard pop singer would make that reunion feel trivial. But when the resolution is delivered with the raw, overpowering vocal maturity and the slight melancholy edge of someone like Gwendorado, the adult brain accepts the emotional reality of the catharsis.
It believes the struggle.
Her voice acts as the bridge between the child's joyful acceptance of the narrative magic and the adult's stubborn need for profound, earned emotional resonance.
Okay, my mind is slightly blown by the architecture of that one theater moment. I mean, we've established exactly how this massive emotional payload is delivered in the dark. We understand the cognitive machinery of the climax.
But the movie eventually ends.
Right here is the reality of the business. A movie only lasts 2 hours. And if this intellectual property is going to survive, and if it's going to continue generating 76 billion Korean won a year to keep SAMG afloat, our discussion has to shift.
We have to look outside the theater.
We have to look at how this psychological bonding is maintained long-term out in the real world after the credits roll.
Because coherence isn't a one-time injection if you want to build an ecosystem.
Yeah.
That feeling of safety has to be relentlessly sustained.
Exactly. So let's crack open how they distribute that coherence. Let's break down the studio pipeline and what industry analysts refer to as the Evergreen Loop.
The Evergreen Loop, I love this concept.
The structural data in our sources reveals a highly integrated, almost frighteningly efficient publication and distribution framework. I mean, SAMG Entertainment controls the IP. They are the master rights holder of all things Teenieping.
But they don't do it alone, right?
No, they don't try to do it all themselves. They use a very specific, multi-tiered label structure to distribute the music.
It's a brilliant division of labor that maximizes their psychological reach across different platforms.
Right. First up, you have Genie Music, which is a massive subsidiary of KT Corporation, and they manage the global and domestic DSP distribution. So we're talking Melon Genie Bugs, Apple Music, Spotify.
All the major players.
And they've done this across all the previous lighter television seasons. Sparkling Star Secret and Princess Catch Teenieping, they are the institutional foundation.
They ensure the music is simply omnipresent wherever you go to stream. It's there.
But then for this specific sequel soundtrack, because of the heavy emotional weight we just discussed, they brought in a second player. They integrated Collab Asia Music as the primary label exclusively for the high-profile singles.
That includes Dorado's Light of Love and the Baek Ji-young Maternal duet.
Exactly. And crucially, there is a third massive player in this ecosystem, BY4M Studio.
And this is where the behavioral engineering really leaves the theater and infiltrates daily life.
Completely, BY4M Studio handles the theatrical distribution, but more importantly, they handle data-driven targeting. To give you an idea of their scale, in 2025, BY4M generated 78.3 billion Korean won in revenue and ranked second in the entire domestic box office distribution market.
They are absolute giants in this space.
They really are. They own a proprietary digital content network that boasts 25 million monthly active users.
So we are looking at a massive, seamlessly integrated machine. But how do we recontextualize this for our deep dive?
Right. What does it mean for the psychology of the audience?
Because It is incredibly easy to look at these numbers, the multi-tiered DSP distribution, the 25 million active users, the corporate synergy, and view it purely as a cold business operation. But I want to propose that we look at the macroeconomics equation of this franchise, not as a financial formula, but as a literal map of human behavioral reinforcement.
Okay, I love this angle. Break that down for me because I am looking at the actual literal equation from our source notes, and my eyes are kind of glazing over looking at it.
Yes. The sources provide a literal calculus equation used for modeling the total commercial yield of this family IP. It is represented as Y total.
Right, I have it right here. Let me read this out. It says Y total equals T box plus the integral from 0 to T of S digital DT plus M retail plus L live plus D meta. I mean, I host a music deep dive. I didn't sign up for advanced calculus.
I know, it sounds insane.
Translate this math into something human for me.
Right. I know it sounds like advanced calculus, but we can translate those variables into human behaviors. Think of it like a snowball rolling down a mountain. T-box is the theatrical box office.
Okay, that one is easy.
That is the initial trauma and resolution cycle we just spent 20 minutes discussing in the theater. That's the core of the snowball.
The injection of the emotional payload.
Exactly. It's the inciting incident. But the most important variable in that entire equation, the momentum of the snowball, is the integral of S digital over time that represents the cumulative digital streaming royalties stretching into infinity.
And this is driven entirely by what psychologists call the pediatric Evergreen Loop, right?
Yes. And the way children drive this loop is fundamentally biologically different from how adults consume music.
Entirely different. I mean, as adults, our brains are hardwired to seek novelty.
Right. We get bored easily.
When an adult finishes watching a highly emotional television drama like the Netflix shows Gwendorado usually sings for, they might stream her soundtrack on Spotify for a few weeks to process their lingering feelings.
But eventually they experience rapid engagement decay. The novelty wears off. They move on to the next show, the next podcast, the next emotional stimulus.
Right. I'll obsess over a song for a month and then never listen to it again.
Exactly. But children do not seek novelty in the same way children seek cognitive security. They find psychological safety through highly repetitive media consumption.
Oh, this is the classic parent trap. This is why a 5-year-old will demand to watch the exact same movie every single day for a solid month, driving their parents absolutely insane.
Precisely. And there's a neurological reason they do that once a child has gone through the profound emotional journey of the film, once they have genuinely felt the fear of the dark ocean, felt the agonizing grief of the separated mother, and then experienced the massive, cathartic, overwhelming relief of Gwyn Dorado'S light of love. Their brain wants to re-experience that exact resolution over and over again.
That makes so much sense.
They aren't watching it for the plot. They already know the plot. They are watching it to repeatedly prove to their own nervous system that the world is ultimately safe. They are self-soothing.
That is wild. So expanding on that loop, BY4M Studio absolutely knows this is how children's brains work. They actually use behind-the-scenes recording sessions to build pre-release emotional attachment.
Setting the stage early.
Yeah, they seed the music to families and Gen Z communities on their digital network before the movie even hits theaters.
They're preloading the cognitive state. By the time the audience finally sits in the dark theater, they already have subconscious built-in affinity for the vocalists. The safety net is already in place.
And then post-release, the child demands to hear Light of Love in the car on the way to school in the living room while they play before bed.
Over and over.
That constant, relentless child-led repeat streaming provides ongoing emotional stability for the child, which drives that infinite digital streaming variable we talked about in the equation. It's brilliant.
But the behavioral loop doesn't stop at digital streaming because human beings have a deep innate desire to physicalize their emotional attachments.
Right.
We want to hold the things that make us feel safe.
Which brings us perfectly to the M retail variable in our calculus equation, physical consumer product merchandising.
The toys.
Because this intense emotional attachment physically manifests in the relentless demand for interactive toys. The sources specifically mention the release of the Whale Heartstone compact and other musical collectibles that were perfectly synchronized with the song's release.
Think about the psychology of that object. When a child begs for and finally holds that Whale Heartstone compact, they're not just holding a piece of brightly colored plastic.
It's so much more than that.
To them, they are holding a physical talisman of the exact emotional resolution they experienced in the theater.
Yeah.
They are literally clutching the safety that Gwendorato's voice promised them. The toy is a physical manifestation of coherence.
That is so profound, a talisman of safety, and the ecosystem just keeps expanding from there to capture every facet of their reality.
It just keeps growing.
We also have the L Live variable, which represents high-ticket live theater touring and stage adaptations, keeping the physical community alive. And finally, D Meta, which represents interactive digital placement.
Virtual world.
Yeah, the brand has built virtual space partnerships within the massive global metaverse platform Play Together.
So if you take a step back and look at this entire pipeline from a macro perspective, from the initial trauma in the theater to the soothing repetition on the streaming platform to clutching the talisman in the toy aisle to singing with the community on the live stage to embodying an avatar in the metaverse.
It is essentially a perfectly closed cognitive loop.
Exactly. There's no exit because the audience doesn't want to exit.
You stream the song for comfort, you buy the toy to physically hold that comfort in your hand, and you log into the metaverse to literally live inside that comfort.
It is brilliant.
And every single touch point of that massive 76 billion won ecosystem is anchored by the emotional memory of that one singular vocal performance at the climax of the film.
It is, without a doubt, a masterclass in psychological architecture. The studio has built an environment where the audience's completely natural biological drive for cognitive coherence actively, perpetually sustains the financial life cycle of the intellectual property.
So what does this all mean for the baseline we established at the beginning of this deep dive to wrap up our thoughts for today? The Teenieping legend of the Whale Heartstone soundtrack is undeniably utilizing targeted vocal profiles to build an incredibly sturdy bridge across generations.
A very sturdy bridge indeed.
They have constructed an emotional spectrum that validates the young child's wonder, with K-pop honors the teenager's transitional courage and deeply respects the adult's complex grief with veteran ballad singers.
And at the absolute center of that soaring architecture, providing the heavy lifting required to deliver genuine, unshakable emotional resolution, is Gwendorado.
By successfully transitioning her immense vocal talent from adult Netflix melodramas to a major multi-generational animated family franchise, she isn't just singing a new song on a new soundtrack.
No, she is doing so much more.
She is operating as a fundamental mechanism of psychological safety for an entire audience.
And in doing so, she secures an evergreen presence in their lives. The emotional bond she forms with a 5-year-old child in that theater today will echo through their cognitive development for years to come. She becomes part of their foundational memory of feeling safe.
Okay, that is a perfect, profound place to pause for today, but we are absolutely not done with this topic.
Oh, there is so much more to unpack.
Because next time we need to examine exactly why Gwyn was cast beside Baek Ji-young and major K-pop idols.
Yes, the specific group dynamics of that 4-track lineup deserve a deep dive of their own. The juxtaposition of those voices is fascinating.
Exactly. I want you, the listener, to consider each OST singer's assigned function as we move forward.
Think about the roles they play.
We've established today that Gwyn appears perfectly positioned as the soundtrack's powerful emotional resolution voice. Meanwhile, the idols provide that crucial youth reach and early engagement, and Baek Ji-young supplies the established veteran OST authority to ground the adults.
The contrast in those assigned roles is striking when you see them all on the same track list.
It really is. So here's a provocative thought for you to mull over until our next conversation. What if this specific casting strategy signifies a massive evolution in how the Korean music industry views her?
As an artist.
The deeper argument we will explore next time is that Korea may now be treating Gwendorado as a highly dependable, specialized vocalist with a completely distinct artistic identity.
She has really evolved.
They are no longer merely treating her as a foreign discovery who had a viral run on Sing Again 4.
It's a fascinating evolution of her career growth, moving from a competition reality star who just hits big notes for applause to a specialized vocal functionary who could hold her own both functionally and artistically alongside absolute industry veterans.
We are going to look entirely at the validation of her specialized vocal function and the incredible trajectory of her artistic career in our next deep dive. This is going to be a brilliant conversation.
I can't wait.
Thank you so much for joining us, for listening, and for diving deep into the psychological layers of the music with us. We'll see you next time.